Hi, Achim from InnerSpace Explorers. Last time somebody complained that I was hunched over and looked miserable, so I hope it's better this time. And I was also asked by one of my patrons if I could talk a little bit about my camera setup and what I use for my underwater photography. Super happy to do that, and yeah, let's go into it. So on my land photography and on my land videos, so most of the stuff that I put on YouTube, I use DJI products. So I use an X3 on an Osmo for most of my videos, and some stuff I film with a Mavic Mini. And the problem is that most of this doesn't work underwater. So if I do underwater, we have to divide between just taking a shot for Instagram or during a class or something like that, or just the camera that I have always with me just in case the whale shark passes by. And that usually is a Sea Life Micro 2.0, I think it's called. I'll put a link here in the description so you can have a look if you're interested. Fantastic little camera. The good thing is it can't really drown because it doesn't have a real housing. It's waterproof in itself. Big knobs, even with thick gloves, easy to handle, great results, all good as long as you don't allow it to compensate for the colors. So if you do that, you get terrible reddish pictures. So that's a bit annoying, but once you figure out how that works, perfect. So when we talk underwater photography, like I go to take pictures, then it's obviously all SLR, and that's what this video is all about. So I started with a Nikon EOS 3 and then worked my way up to the Nikon EOS 5, which I think I drowned 3 or 4 of them at least, because they were rated to 50 meters. You could take them to 80, but a lot of time you press the button and then there was water in there, and compared to the Nikon EOS 3 that you could wash out and save, the Nikon EOS 5, once it had water, it was gone. And then I switched to a real SLR system, which back then was a Nikon, whatever, I can't remember, in a UK-Germany housing, which was great. I had quite a few of these, one for macro, one for fisheye, and so on and so on. And that was all perfect. And then I switched obviously to digital at some point, and that's where it kind of stopped for me. So lovely Aaron used to say that I'm a dinosaur. He says that like once a day. And probably he's right, because what you see here is all relatively old gear compared to what's on the market today. But I'll talk about why this is in a second. So for my land photographer, for example, I use a Canon Eos 5 Mark II, which is a fantastic camera. I just don't want to take it in the water for a couple of reasons. I mean, first of all, it's super expensive. So if you drown it, which still happens, that hurts. Same goes for the lens. And the other thing is that most of the features that made me buy it for my land-based photography, I don't need and use underwater. So what I still use is my lovely Hugifort housing and my Canon EOS 400. And if you're like, oh god, that's totally outdated, oh well, but it has everything I need. I mean, my underwater photography is completely manual. So there's only one thing I do here. I put it on M, and then I do everything by hand, because that gives me the freedom to create the picture that I want and not have the camera create something based on its measurements. Probably you see a little analogy to diving with a computer or diving with a bottom timer. Bit the same thing. I just want the freedom to make my own decisions and then see the results. So the other thing is that these bodies are meanwhile super cheap. You can get these EOS 400 bodies for around $100 on eBay or wherever, your local second-hand newspaper, whatever it is. And that allows me to have a couple of spares. So I think I have 3 or 4 of these flying around. And if I travel somewhere, I always bring a spare. So in case something happens, I can just grab another one from the suitcase and be back in the water. So that gives me a lot of freedom and security, instead of drowning my EOS 5 and then sitting mad there for 2 days and being not able to take photos, especially if you travel to remote locations. Same goes for the Strobes. This is Subtronic Alphas here and one Subtronic Mega here. There is new ones, they're way smaller, blah 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 blah. First of all, again, very, very expensive if you have an issue. And if we talk technical diving, we talk about very very bad gear abuse, basically. I mean, a lot of stages and stuff flying around the water. There's always a good chance that you bang something heavy into your camera gear, and obviously you break stuff. So these, beside the fact that I love these strobes for the color temperature, the angle, the way they're set up, just the way they are, you get them for 200 euros on eBay. So if I break one, I get a new one. Still hurts, still is damn, but it's not like if you break a new one for 2 grand. The setup that you see here today is the way I use it today, and I'll put you a little video clip right here where you see me using it on our Viking project. Now let's talk about how I used it a couple of years ago when I was still more into extreme deep technical stuff. So the difference back then was that no strobe arms, no strobes like this, and these handles were also gone. You see that? And there was like just a little loop, and I'm not sure how good you can see that. Anyway, there is the groove here where you can put in a neoprene band, a little bit like a mask strap, where you can put your hand through, and then actually that stays in one hand, and you can use everything. I mean, here's the trigger. I can basically handle all my knobs while my hand is on the camera. It's a bit like a Goodman handle. And what I used as a strobe solution was this one. I just found that in the basement when I prepared for the video and was like, ooh, I still have it. It's broken, but it's great. It's still flying around. It's a CNC Yellow Sub 300. And I used that as a free strobe. So it was just the setup like this. And the camera housing had another bolt snap. So I clicked the bolt snap in here and got the entire setup on my right chest steering. And it was slightly positive. First advantage, if I lose it, I know it goes up and I have a fair chance to find it afterwards. Second, if I clip it here, I put it behind my arm and it was like not higher than my head, but it was drifting there. It was not hanging down and creating any issues, and it was not interfering with my stages or anything like that. So that was the reason for that setup. And then doing fisheye photography or whatever, I could have this stretched out in front of me and the strobe set back almost a meter or even a little bit more, which gave me a lot of angle and not much backscatter, or I could basically aim it freehand wherever I wanted it. It was just the cable between the camera housing and the strobe. So I put a picture in here where I actually take a picture on the U333, which sits off Greece, close to 80 meters, and where I take pictures of the conning tower. And I also put you the picture of the conning tower that I did while the shot was done, and so you get a little bit of an idea. And obviously that also is great for traveling. Very small, compact setup, and I really like that. When the strobe died, I looked around a little bit for another one, couldn't find one. And then obviously, I mean, also my diving changed a little bit. I mean, not that I'm not doing technical diving anymore, but it's not as extreme anymore. And it's less travel today, so I dive either from my car or from my own boat. In both cases, the size and the bulkiness of the equipment is not really an issue. So I came up with this, and I really like it. As you saw on this small clip that I did during the Viking project, very stable, very comfortable to work with. This becomes all neutral in the water, slightly negative, but not a real issue. And it still allows me to maneuver the strobes the way I want. I mean, I can set these back, which I do for my wide angle photography. I mean, obviously on land, and aim them a little bit out, so I have almost no backscatter, no nothing. If I do close up, which is the second thing I do a lot, same thing. I can get these in here, I can get this up and get the shot from the top. So I'm very, very flexible with my settings. The strobes themselves have a lot of settings. They have the slave mode, which sometimes comes in very handy, and you can set them from 1 to 0.64 in small increments. They have a TTL and automatic, which I don't use. So perfect. They both have pilot slide built in, which sometimes, especially when you do close-up photography, is also quite nice. And the third one that you see here is a Mega. It's basically the same, couple of small differences, and that I use as a slave. So I put you another picture in here. Where you see that diver taking a picture, and you see the strobe of the diver just going off in the picture. And that was done with this. So the diver obviously had an not working housing with the strobe, that strobe cable attached to the strobe, and this little photocell, actually that's from Heinrich Weikam's, was on the side somewhere hidden on the harness. And when I did the picture of the diver, my strobe was taken by that photocell and ignited the strobe on the diver's camera setup. So that's the way that was done, and I still use that like in caves, in wrecks, to give some sorry, to give some additional lighting. I put another picture here from a cave dive where I did the same thing. So the strobe was strapped on the doubles of a diver pointing backwards, and this one was routed along the harness of the diver, so it was on the front. So the diver was in front of me. I took the picture from the front, my strobe triggered this one, and then the strobe on the back of the diver went off and put light in the tunnel behind the diver, which always gives a nice effect. So that's what this is for. I have a few of these flying around with these cables, so I can set up actually a complete scenario in a cave or somewhere. But especially in tech dives, I mean, if it's deep stuff, it's a bit of a time issue, so mostly you do this in cave diving. The last thing, yeah, lens. As I just mentioned, there's two things that I do in my photography, which is either extreme wide angle. So I really like to play with objects and the comparison of sizes, like full rec with that small diver. Just put you a couple of pictures here. That give you an idea. So it's always the wreck and the diver, and the diver with this huge coral on that reef. So that's just my type of thing, and that's obviously all fisheye photography. I also like to do pictures where you have something in the real foreground like a fish, and then with the fisheye a huge background. Same thing, so you're playing with the proportions. Or I do a close-up photography where I give you a couple of samples here as well. And that's the reason I use the big dome port, because that dome port allows me to put in also a 50 or 60 millimeter lens without changing the dome, which then again makes traveling easier and makes for a more compact setup. I just put in usually another body with the lens prepared, and it's a very fast way of switching it out. I can use the same strobe setup as I showed you before, and so I don't need a flat port or anything like that. Still don't have any irritations in the picture, as you can see in the samples. So only if I would go into extreme, like a 100 millimeter lens, that wouldn't fit in or anything like that. But that is something I rarely do. And then obviously I have a flat port for it. And I normally don't do any portraits or like these middle size landscapes or stuff. That's just not my cup of tea. So it's either real close-up or it's real extreme wide angle. All right, if you have any questions on that, please use the comment section. If you like it, I'm happy if you give me thumbs up. If you haven't so, please subscribe to the channel. And if you subscribe, please hit that little bell so you get a notification when I upload new content. If you want to discuss things more in detail and you really like the channel, please check out the Patreon site. That's where there's a very nice private community and we chat a lot and discuss things. So I would really appreciate that. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.